Before you enjoy our video, please take a moment to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you'll be the first to know when we upload new videos. Growing up, we pretty much have no control and are completely at the mercy of our parents or caregivers. And most often, we think of them as superheroes and accept whatever is given to us. No matter how much love, time, and attention they gave us, their involvement in our life undoubtedly affects how we are as adults, and that consequently also affects our love life and our relationships. When those who are supposed to love and care for us are the ones who do not provide what we need, whether knowingly or unknowingly, then we may grow up to develop certain behaviors. Even if we can't name the after effects, whether it's feeling like a permanent victim even after years have passed, acting passive-aggressively when upset, retreating into passivity, or creating a false, always happy version of ourselves, there are many ways childhood emotional trauma continues to affect us even after we've grown up. Not only that, but this emotional trauma impacts our adult relationships and our significant others. We basically develop different attachment styles and become so used to being in a certain role within our family that we look for love in partners in a way that keeps us stuck in that same role without a lot of self-awareness. So unless we become aware of and shift our patterns, we will continue to live out the same emotional trauma that we experienced as a child. Often people who grow up in happy, healthy, and stable homes where caregivers were emotionally available and responsive to their needs have a secure attachment style. These people don't push partners away or cling too tightly. While they may have troubles in their relationships, an unhealthy attachment style isn't the cause, but most of us have a different experience. So the question is, can we be more self-aware and understand how our childhood affects our current emotional behaviors, patterns, and love life? Let's talk about it. There are specific childhood issues that play out in our love life and cause us to act in a certain way. The clingy. If we had neglectful parents who abandoned us frequently, either by physically leaving or by being emotionally unavailable due to their own issues, then that meant that as a child we rarely had a parental figure to lean on. This may have caused us to develop an insecure, ambivalent, or anxious preoccupied attachment style, or what we call the clingy. This person will need a lot of intimacy and is very watchful of changes in relationships, sometimes to the point of paranoia. They may cling to potential partners because they are very afraid of being left and being conditioned to have an underlying belief that the relationships needed most deeply will not work out in the long run. They may also feel like they are more devoted to their partner than their partner is to them and may even have low self-esteem and several mood swings. The rejecter. This one is when we experience persistent neglect or abuse, causing us to develop a fearful, avoidant, or disorganized, disoriented attachment style. Individuals with this attachment style may be very uncomfortable showing affection to the point that they close themselves off emotionally. Because they are terrified of rejection, they find it extremely difficult trusting people. The avoider. The less emotionally expressive parents are, the more reserved one could be in relationships. When our caregivers reject us or are unresponsive to our needs, we may develop an insecure avoidant or dismissive avoidant attachment style. With this attachment style, one is likely to avoid close relationships or keep partners at an emotional distance. The avoider may hide feelings, push people away, keep secrets, and shut down when others show emotion. Despite these behaviors and seeming disinterest in intimacy, insecure avoidant people often strongly desire relationships and feel alone. This is because they have been trained as children not to express their needs or their desires for affection, attention, and closeness. Mainly, they lack in communication, but may be able to express their love in non-verbal ways with gifts and physical touch. Sometimes, however, they will even struggle with physical touch, that is, only want sex and never cuddle, hug, hold hands, etc., and may even spend all their time on hobbies or work so their partner feels ignored. The people pleaser. The more inattentive parents are to their child, the more attention seeking they grow up to be in relationships. As an adult, if they find themselves vying for a romantic interest attention, it's likely that they are a people pleaser. It is also possible that they were constantly yearning for one or both parents' attention as a child. This could be the result of one or both parents' own attachment styles, the absence of a parent, or some other circumstance. A people pleaser is passive. It is an unconscious process of making self subservient to the partner and prioritizing their needs over self to the point that it may seem they're doing them a favor by adding value to their partner's life. But in reality, the pleaser does not get their own emotional needs met, and the partner often feels like they bear the weight of being responsible for the moods. This leads to a lose-lose situation for both people involved in the relationship. When self-sacrificing people pleasers do start to prioritize their emotional needs in the context of relationships, their mind will resist it and they often feel guilty for giving themselves any time or attention. The defective. Defectiveness is the feeling that one is unworthy or undeserving of being loved. If one was a more sensitive or introverted child, a cruel relationship in the family, where a mean or dismissive parent or any family member would weigh heavily on the child's self-esteem for many years to come, then that can be the cause of this sense of defectiveness, leading to that feeling that one is somehow defective as a person and or has shame-based thinking. Naturally, distancing oneself from loving relationships of any sort would be the ideal coping mechanism for not feeling worthy of being loved. Furthermore, because the self doesn't feel good enough to be loved, being reluctant to let anyone see the true self would be out of the question. The secure one. The more attentive parents were, the more open one might be in relationships. How expressive and attentive parents are during childhood will reflect how open one is and can be in future relationships. When parents are able to express themselves, be affectionate and attentive, they tend to raise healthy children who are comfortable expressing themselves in many different ways. We basically understand what love is, how to receive it, and how to express it, and most importantly, how we come to stay into love, all from how our parents or caregivers showed us love. Although a person's relationship with his or her parents may evolve over time and become less of a factor as independence takes over, having a healthy relationship with one or more caregivers is only beneficial to romantic relationships in adulthood. The dependent. It's natural that parents make the majority of decisions when we are young. What we eat, what we spend our time doing, and who we're allowed to play with, etc. But after a certain age, if one was not allowed or trusted to make choices, then that person becomes what we call the dependent. This person will obviously need to depend on someone else and will thus be attracted to partners that make the majority of their decisions as well. When parents are overbearing and make one feel apprehensive about making decisions for self, then they cause that feeling of insecurity and unreliability in one's own decision making. In healthy adult partnerships, both people are comfortable expressing their desires, and they make decisions together, so naturally over time, the dependent's self-esteem will be eroded and may even feel unable to leave an unhealthy relationship if they are overly dependent on the partner. The abused. If a person grows up in an abusive home, then they are most likely to have no emotional attachment. This person may turn manipulative in relationships and often not see people as human beings, but only as objects that can be used to meet their own needs. Severe abuse and neglect, like the loss of a parent from death, divorce, removal by child protection services, etc., is very traumatic and disruptive, and therefore is what causes a disorganized style. This person may use any and all of the love languages, whichever ones their target responds to best, to work their con on them, since they tend to be emotional con artists. Not only does trauma impact us within our adult relationships, but it also affects our partners. When we have an unhealthy attachment style, one may feel uncomfortable when the partner shows anger or sadness and not know how to react. We may also have a hard time recognizing our partner's emotions or responding appropriately to their feelings. This may even cause one to pull away or grab on too tightly, thus harming both the relationship and the significant other. The entitled. As children, we need boundaries and thrive when parents have the ability to say no and be authoritative when they need to. Without these boundaries growing up, one will tend towards finding partners that are similarly passive and have a difficult time saying no. By now, we can come to understand, in many cases, whichever role our family required us to fill, we adapt accordingly and learn to fill that role. This carries on to adulthood. So if we were raised with parents who had weak personal boundaries, then we are at a higher risk of developing a sense of entitlement about the world and an unrealistic set of expectations for our intimate relationships. At the same time, if our partner is someone who does have healthy boundaries, it may frustrate or repel us because we can't get what we want like we did in our childhood. This can also make us feel that the partner must and needs to do what we want in order to prove their love. But this is a very unhealthy view of what real love is. So these are some ways as to how our childhood translates into our romantic life in adulthood. Naturally, every relationship a person has, beginning at birth, is rooted in the attachment style learned from his or her caregivers during childhood. Although life experiences affect a person's choices as individuals, we have the choice to craft our romantic relationships, friendships, and so on to be exactly as we'd like them to be.